Hello, everyone. This is Robert Aceves, and I'm here with Neil Babins, starting a new episode of MindFitPodcast. How you doing, Neil?
Doing great. How about you?
Doing great. I'm very, very happy about the weather today. It's one of the first times that we actually feel like we're in the fall. It's a little cloudy, and it's a nice day to go out for a walk.
It's beautiful. It's cloudy and gray and overcast, and that's kind of nice for Southern Californians. People think we're weird when we say
Mhm.
that, but it's actually kind of refreshing, because it's been so hot in the mid
I know.
90s in October. It
Yeah,
always seems to happen right before Halloween. The weather goes down like to the 70s, 60s. It's nice and breezy,
yeah,
refreshing.
I
We need
know.
rain, though. We need
We do.
rain. Yeah, we need.
And things are starting to come together for the election that's coming up. Actually, this episode will air the day of the election, so we'll
That's
see what
right.
happens that day. Yeah,
That's right. Well, if you're listening to us now, the results are coming in. So break away from CNN for a bit or
yeah,
whatever you're watching, and take a break, have some tea, do some
yeah.
sit ups, whatever you need to do. Yeah.
I'm
Do
sure the whole world's
some
going to
sit
be
ups.
watching tonight.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, actually, the debate, no, the debate was tonight or last night.
I don't know, actually. Good
think
question.
it's tonight, I believe. Tonight, I believe so. I believe the second, well, it's supposed to be the third, but the uh, presidential debate is supposed to be tonight. So yeah, I mean, big night, big day, big week. Hopefully it won't take as long as they say it will for
Yeah.
results to come in. I think this stress is going to be a little bit too much for everybody, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. I mean, a lot of things are up in the line, so we'll see what happens.
Hmm.
Anyway, today we wanted to talk about fake news. I think it's a very important subject. It's been quite a roller coaster in the past few years, ever since social media took over. And it seems like, for whatever reason, fake news seem to go and spread faster than the truth and anything else. It's almost as if we love, fake news, and we love hearing like all this horrible news about people and things, and for some reason they tend to become viral. And what effects that has in our psyche and ourselves, right? It seems
Hmm.
like it's causing, and from what I see, a lot of division in people, and it's also creating a lot of anxiety and a lot of mental disorders. So
Hmm.
um, yeah, so what are your thoughts on this, Neil?
Well, I think it's actually travels 6 times faster, fake news does, than real news, because as
Right.
they say, real news is boring, it's dull, and it
Yeah.
doesn't really elicit a lot of response and reaction in people. But fake news tends to go viral, like you said. And I was just watching a really great show on Netflix last night. David Letterman is interviewing people. He
Hmm.
goes, "This guest needs no introduction" by David Letterman is the name of the show, I believe, some, along those lines. And he was interviewing Barack Obama, the former president, and Barack Obama was talking about information algorithms and how basically saying the same thing as the documentary The Social Dilemma was saying, that based on your current beliefs and your core beliefs and whatever you like on your timeline, whatever you tend to post, whatever you tend to gravitate toward, is
Hmm.
what you're going to find on your newsfeed.
Hmm.
So polarization happens a lot in that way, and fake news is created so easily to speak right into the psyche, like you said, of any particular group that's already polarized, and it already feeds into your core evidence beliefs, and it just becomes viral, it becomes sent, and usually the algorithms of the social media will send it to whoever they think is going to buy into it. you
Hmm.
know there's an actual website that I found when we were talking about this that just amazed me. It's called breakyourownnews.com. I'm not exposing any particular website because there's hundreds of these, but literally you can go on it. It's for humor. It's designed for humor and for fun effect. It's the breaking news meme generator. You put in a headline, any headline you want. You put in a ticker. You fill out the ticker with the latest updates, your own updates, and then you upload an image, or you could upload several images or a video. And it says this app is intended for fun, humor, and parody. Be careful what you make and how it may be shared. You should
Hmm.
avoid making things which are unlawful, defamatory, or likely to cause distress. Have fun and be kind. I agree with all of the above, but these things exist and people do it for fun.
Hmm.
And sometimes, and as I think even on YouTube, the more hits you get, the more views you get, the more you get more bonuses. You get, I don't know if you get paid or you get it increases your popularity. So people want things that go viral. People want things that have have a strong, poignant, reaction in people. And like I said, Barack Obama said this himself to David Letterman when we are talking on the show, which I highly recommend. The show. He's really David Letterman's just he also interviews Ellen, which is amazing too. But side note, they say that they both Barack Obama was saying the fake news goes right to the algorithm that has been determined would have the biggest reaction to help it go viral, and it serves as a social distraction, which is another thing. I think fake news serves as a social distraction. And I'll pause for a minute here, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the pandemic that we're currently in. Also, talk about fake news. I don't know what's fake and what's not, and that's the whole point about
Hmm.
something like the pandemic. My argument has been and continues to be it exists along a spectrum of information because we don't have a fact sheet. And yes, it's true, when it first came out we really didn't know. That's true. And as scientists determine more and more information, they'll reveal more and more information. But I'm saying
Hmm.
after all this time, you've put the world on lockdown with variations, but you've put the world on lockdown. But what are the facts now? Can you get it from services? Yes, no.
Hmm.
Should you wear a mask? Yes, no. What kind of mask? How thick? Does it need to cover your nose? Yes, no. I remember a stand up routine by Lewis Black, and he said, information's all over the place. He goes, is milk good for you? Is milk good or bad? And there's a big long pause. I rest my case, and he cracked me up because that's exactly it. There's
Hmm.
no fact sheet, there's no, and I realize it takes time for us to know. So we may as well play on the air on the side of caution. I get that mentality. But at the same time, I think the reason that a lot of people are buying into whatever news they're buying into, whether it's the pandemic or whatnot, is because we don't know what's true. And when they say, how could you argue with science? Because we don't even know what science is anymore. We don't know who is releasing the information, who's been paid to release that information. How do we know how the science has been conducted? How do we know how it's been concluded? How do we know who to believe? Because there's some scientists who are disagreeing with one another. And there
Yeah.
is no science that we can say that is the facts. How could you argue that? They're even
Yeah.
arguing climate change. you
You
know.
know, there are so many things happening uh, that are, and it's happening right now. Like, one of the things that shocked me recently, I was browsing through my Instagram and I see this ad by doctors, and it was against the flu vaccine and saying that it doesn't work, that it's bad for you, and had all these reasons, and how there's a huge percentage of people that it doesn't do anything for you, and it actually makes you more sick, and all these things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're actually placing ads for this. And then I found out it was an anti-vax group that's posting this ads. And then like shortly after, they banned them because they started, there was some kind of ban on Twitter and all these places for fake news, and they were trying to advertise these things that could potentially harm people that don't get the vaccine and the flu vaccine. And so that's one thing. I mean, I believe in vaccines. I know some people don't, and I respect that. But to advertise it where you're starting to, go basically against science, and they were citing, studies and things that have come out, and it was very. I mean, I saw it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is this true? And then I saw it as an ad, and I thought, okay, well, if it's an ad and someone's paying for this, maybe they're trying to get people to find out some truths. And I started doing my own research, and then I found out about this group that's doing it. And
Mhm.
so uh, it's so hard to tell nowadays. And it's they make this ads and these videos and things on YouTube that are very convincing, and there's no law that says you can't post something that's not true yet. And so
Mhm.
they're allowed to post basically on almost anything. And oh my gosh, like, we are being bombarded with all this information on a regular basis. And the problem with the algorithms you were mentioning is, the moment you see a video of something, even if it's not true, it would bring you more of that. So eventually it starts to become true in your mind, and you start creating this world, and you start seeing it from that perspective, even though you may be wrong. But to make you change your mind, it's really hard, because you've already seen all this data and information that just has shaped your mind in some way. So it's really, really hard to really think for ourselves nowadays. And we saw it in the documentary, the Social Dilemma, that they literally have the power to shift, our behaviors and our thinking, and in some ways probably decide an election. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing you need to ask when you do receive information on
Mhm,
social media or wherever you receive it is where are they, whoever posted it, getting their information from?
mhm,
Where am I getting my information from? In other words, whoever you are, where are you gathering your information? What venues typically? Are you watching? Barack Obama said on the interview, because if you watch Fox News and you watch PRN, you're getting different information blotches that are predetermined, and your core beliefs are accepting them and believing them because you're already in that polarity. So where are you getting information from? And also intrinsically, internally, where am I getting my information from? What are my beliefs already? What paradigms and schemas am I already bringing to the information that I'm reading? Because if I
mhm,
have a tendency to believe certain things, I'm going to have a tendency to believe certain things, right? So if something is released, where am I getting my information from, and
mhm,
where am I getting my information from? What paradigms am I bringing to it, and how am I critically thinking it through? Because again, when they say, "How could you argue science?" It's like, I can't argue science, but even science will tell you that it's never conclusive. It's theory.
mhm,
There's always another um, report, or there's always another research experimentation, or field of study that can bring in a new results that can say that theory is no longer. You know how many theories have gone obsolete that
mhm,
were really considered truth, and not because people were ignorant. It's because science needed to develop. So it is true that we don't know everything, but there should be, up to a point, a fact sheet for basic safety. You know what I'm saying? How do you avoid? We know that saturated fat could lead to XYZ. We know that
mhm,
too much salt could lead to XYZ. You know, there's more information yet to be gathered on that, but there's even people who say, come back and say that that's not the case. That's not what causes cancer. That's not what causes heart disease, or that's not what causes aneurysms, or leads, or increases the likelihood of it. So, is caffeine good for you? Yes or no? You know what I mean? I,
yeah,
I
yeah,
I mean, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, so when people say, how can you argue science? Because science is arguable, and it depends who's saying it. It depends, like you said, why they're saying it,
yeah.
who they're saying it to, who paid them to say it. Sorry, but it's true,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, you hear the news about eating chocolate, that it's good for your heart, or drinking wine, it's good for you, and things like that. But then you look at the background and you realize that there's companies behind this research, and it's really easy to manipulate research. I've done research in the past, and I know what it's like, and people can do it all the time. The problem with research is that there's, like you said, it's always questionable. You always question it. You always try to figure out, and then the thing about research too is you want to look at how many people have done the research on this, and if they were able to replicate the same results. But also, I think it's important to have our own mind and to realize, like, for example, if I eat chocolate a lot, I mean, what's going to happen? Probably going to end up gaining weight. Or,
Hmm.
if I drink alcohol a lot, I'd probably become a drunk. I mean, there's so many
Hmm.
things that we need to look at and think for ourselves, and be a little bit more conscious. I think. To give you an example, my mom, she's a biochemist, and she knows a lot about chemistry and stuff like that. But then there's this thing, I don't know if you know the name of it, but it's this chlorine that Trump was talking about a few months ago,
Oh, yeah.
that was good for the coronavirus, and he was talking about injecting it or something like that, and it's basically what it is. It's chlorine that they use to clean the pool and to clean the water in the pool,
Hmm.
and there's a huge movement on this, and there's a lot of videos on this. And my mom has actually researched it, and she started using it herself because apparently it heals everything and it cures all these things, and it's good to protect you from um, COVID. And this thing is getting so out of control that in South America, in Bolivia, one of the leaders believed in it or believes in it or something, and they put it in a ballot to allow people to use this legally, because here in the US it's illegal to have it. As I mean, you can have it to clean your pool, but you're not allowed to ingest it. It's bad for you
Hmm.
because it's chlorine, and people could die if they ingest it the wrong way. You're supposed
Hmm.
to just take very small amounts of it with water. I don't know the exact amounts or formulas, but the I was reading this article about in Bolivia that they actually passed the bill, and the doctors and scientists are really alarmed and shocked because, and now this is a month or two ago that I saw this. I don't know what the deal is today, but the craziest part is that the doctors were saying that the effects that people are seeing is not from the actual like benefits of it. It's actually because the chlorine dehydrates your body, and by dehydrating your body, you have all these things that come from that. So, for example, people who have high blood pressure, apparently it cures it. But the reason why your pressure goes down is because your body's dehydrated and all these things happen, and so it's not an actual cure. And that's the problem, that people go with these things and they think that it's helping them. And I don't, and this is my mom said this. She said, you don't know for sure if this is not really good or bad, like, because apparently some doctor in Germany is the one that started it. She's like, maybe there is some good to it. We just don't know the whole thing yet, because and I think it's true that in some way people are desperate for a cure, for some way to protect themselves from the virus. But at the same time, there are things that we need to have our own mind for, and not just go with the crowd and try these things. And there's people who have died from ingesting chlorine in the U.S. After Trump said what he said. And so this is all fake news, and it's
Yeah.
something that I think it's important to address. So.
It is, and things like the chlorine issue, get pumped out in news. And I know people who automatically believe it. They'll send me copies of articles or links to articles, like, check out this video, this, that, and I'll watch it,
Mhm.
and then I'll have 10 questions immediately that they didn't even ask. I'm like, somebody sent me an article recently, and it was like 15 supposed medical professionals who were talking about how the whole thing was a hoax,
Mhm.
basically. And I said, okay, so because they're wearing white lab coats, it means they're doctors? You know what I'm saying? That's the first question I had. They don't sound like doctors to me. There was one person speaking on their behalf. She didn't sound particularly eloquent. And if she were a doctor, I wouldn't want her to see me. It was my first impression. Now, I don't know that to be true. I don't know that, but that's the whole point, is I don't know that. I don't know if it's fake or not. I don't know if it's valid information or not. And I can't just take it in as, oh my goodness, doctors are saying this. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And are there political agendas behind it? Are there financial agendas behind it? Are
Mhm.
there there's so many other factors that can come into it? And when does it break off from, people say can't argue science? That's starting to be honest, starting to piss me off a little bit when people say that you can't argue with science, because when does it become science and when does it become opinion? When does it become your emotional response and reaction to scientific posturing as opposed to scientific fact? Because if in 5 years, I'm just saying, if in 5 years or even less, we find out not that it's overblown or that it's a hoax, but that, oh no, after all, masks are not what prevents it. Well, this is what prevents it. If people are a little bit, we did what we thought we had to do, fair enough. But if people start to get upset about that, I would understand that upset. I would, you locked us down. You told us to wear a mask, to stand 6 feet apart. Yes, best to err on the side of caution. But if it turns out to not be what was spreading the virus after all, people might be a little bit upset with that. And the converse is true, because I say, if everyone's getting very self righteous and judgmental with each other, what's underneath judgment is usually fear. So I often say, hypothetically, what happens if the other side is correct? What if, is this not part of what you're judging when you're judging people who wear masks or who don't wear masks? You're judging that, what if they're right? Not what if I'm wrong? What if they're right? What if they're correct? What if they're correct that you should be wearing this and you're not? And something happens and the world changes forever because you wouldn't put one on, or vice versa. What if they're wasting their time, what I'm saying, and they're telling you to do this? In fact, what if they're making it worse and they don't even know it? People used to, back in the olden days, people used to use leeches to bleed people to get rid of all kinds of diseases, mental illness, and all kinds of other illnesses. They used to put leeches on it. It was common medical practice.
Mhm. I remember
Common
that.
medical, right? And people didn't wash their hands when they did surgery, from when they went from one patient to another. This was common zeitgeist. It was common social construct. If
Mhm.
you were told you need to wash your hands before you go from one patient to another, you were kicked out of the room. You were literally were. There were stories of people who were kicked out of medical school, who had their licenses taken away because they stood up and said, "This is BS. This is ridiculous. You're overlooking something. How could you argue with science?" You know what I mean?
Hmm.
All the scientists weren't washing their hands and ought to have been, so it's, you can argue with science because if something doesn't make sense, it could be fake news. But there's a difference between, I should point out, there's a difference between fake news that's created and fake news that's just that is interpretive. Interpreting what you're hearing is different than something that's blatantly put out there just to throw people for a loop. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I think there's a difference there.
and
Go ahead.
that's the thing too, like it's so easy to use science to prove your points. Like I could go online right now and find proof that not wearing masks is really the best thing for me or for everybody. I could find proof that the earth is flat. I mean, there's so
Yeah.
many things out there right now that it's so easy to find, you
Right.
know, truth and facts about things. But the truth is that we don't know everything. We don't know a lot of things. And the more we know, the less we know because there's more to know. And that's the beauty of science. It's constantly growing and changing. And it's a constant change. And that is true that things happen. And like you said, 5 years from now, things might be different. But I still think that we should use our own critical thinking and observe the world. Like look at countries that people wear masks all the time. They don't have as many cases as we do in the US.
Right.
What is making so many cases in the US, and why is it that we have so much? Well, I mean, you look at the
Well,
culture, you look at yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but we
Yeah.
don't know. That's true that we're observing that, but we don't know if that's correlational or if that's
Yeah.
causal. We don't know if that's really the reason that the virus has decreased. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just want to point
Yeah,
that out.
right. So that's what I'm saying. Just if we observe and we look, then maybe we can find some of these answers, and maybe we can realize some of the reasons why we have so many cases, and become a little bit more. What's the word? So I think the moment we think that we know everything, and we take something as a fact, and we fight that, and we start to become narrow-minded, is what I call it. Then
Yeah.
it's when we stop learning, and we stop creating the opportunity for debate, for conversations to happen, and people close off and they don't want to hear about things. And that's the problem with fake news, is that you could take so many things that are as truths, and how do you know if they're not, if you're not looking at the opposite side, or trying to research it, make sure that it's true or not. So.
Yeah, yeah. And one other thing that I think is important to point out, I mean, of course, we're using the pandemic as a backdrop, but this can relate to anything.
Hmm.
That I say that one of the tools that we could have is social observation. Of course, we're also, when we observe things socially, we're also observing through our own filter. That's very true. But look around you and see for yourself. Do you see personally, do you see and witness, not just in your own hometown, in your own backyard, but you witness in your entire community, in your entire region, evidence for what either news, whatever news has been telling you is the case? Do you or do you not? And someone brought up an interesting point to me, that oftentimes our social observation is based on anecdotal information. So if you say, well, my friend's uncle's father's sister's brother's sister's cousin lost second cousin, or on her uncle's side, whatever, had COVID and died, and he was only 24. I'm sure, and I don't minimize the deaths and the destruction that has occurred from this virus or any virus,
Hmm.
but you could always find someone, you always know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who had it and got really sick, and the symptoms remained, and had it and got really sick and nothing happened, or had it and was asymptomatic. So anecdotal information, someone pointed out, is not proof either, is not evidence either. Like, I don't know anybody who got sick, or I know a lot of people who've gotten sick, or I know, that's not enough in and of itself. You have to take a large sample of people. You have to talk to 1,000 people, 5,000 people, some of which you know, some of which you don't, and ask these questions. Do you know anybody who's had it? Do you know anybody who's found out they had it and were asymptomatic? And I'm just using the pandemic as an example. I'm not arguing the pandemic. I'm simply saying whatever the news may be, right? So anecdotal, like, I know someone who got sick and passed away, and they weren't even 50, doesn't mean we're in a pandemic. It doesn't mean that that what they tell you, the side that's panicking is correct, nor does it mean the opposite. You know what I'm saying? If you don't know anybody who has passed away from it, or you don't know anybody who got extremely sick, or you do know someone who got extremely sick but recovered, that's doesn't, you have to look at the entire, get as much information as you can. But social observation, look around you. Look around you. What do you see? as
Yeah.
opposed to what, because I remember at the beginning, and yes, best to err on the side of caution. We were all locked down for 10 or 12 weeks. So was I. I was very serious about it. I found myself getting angry at people who were going out. Oh, went to have a barbecue last night. Are you supposed to be having barbecues? That's what was going through my head. And I
Hmm.
meant it. You were told to lock down because I didn't know what was going on. I still don't know what's going on, to be honest. But then after that started to lift a little bit, I say, look around. What do you see? What do you witness? Not anecdotally, like not about your sister-in-law's brother. What do you see in the grand scheme of things as the numbers come back? And yeah, we do see the biggest numbers in the US that we see anywhere else. So what does that mean? You know, but I'm just saying, look around you and critically think, and don't just get a headline and say that's it. You know, because that's not it necessarily. Just because it's a headline. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's so many things that are now. Like one of the things that comes to mind is a lot of times people take a picture of a very famous person and then they put a quote next to it and they start spreading it around like that person said
Mhm.
it. And I mean, they're using this marketing tools like, you have a very prominent celebrity or whatever saying something that can definitely have an effect on people, and people believe it because, oh, it was such and such who said it. But that doesn't mean that that person who said it, first of all, and second, not every celebrity knows everything, and they're not scientists either. And whatever they say doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. But these things have an effect. They make people think. They make people change their minds. They make people believe certain things. And that's the thing. Like this happens all day long when we're in social media. We're constantly being bombarded by information and things that people say, that people do, and we see these things and we take them as truths. And really, honestly, like I feel like I can't believe almost anything anymore because of so many
Mhm.
things that are out there. And even, for example, one thing that comes to mind as well is not too long ago there was an article, because I love watching things about AI, artificial intelligence, and this article said that this AIs were creating their own language and talking to each other, and that they were plotting the end of humanity almost. And that's the way the article worded it. And then you start doing research on this and you find out that it might have been a glitch. It might have been just a pattern of that they recognized that they were sending to each other, but they didn't really. It wasn't a real language or anything like that we know of. But the title of the article made me click on it because I was like, oh my gosh, is this true? Like, because we're all waiting for the end of the world with AI and things like that. So, but talking to a lot of programmers that I know, they always tell me, that's not, we're really far from that, because computers need to get further away, and we need to improve our technology even more than what we have now. It is a possibility, but it's not something that could happen like today. So
Mhm.
as far as
Right.
I know, I may be wrong, but there you go.
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. Well, yeah, and that's the thing, is that people are, even with topics like this, people tend to get even more confused. When we talk about the fact that there's not a definitive way of knowing exactly how to process the information. And say
Hmm.
they gave more. So what do we do? Like, what's the solution? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
People want solutions. I mean, the solution is, I guess, everybody has to make a subjective choice. Is there really an answer? Um, but not to jump to conclusions so quickly, because I think that's part of the polarity that we're seeing. Everyone's worried about potential civil unrest after the election results and whatnot. And part of the thing that's keeping us polarized, in terms of what's the solution, what's the answer, is that people are jumping quickly to reactivity based on beliefs, based on polarized beliefs, fed by algorithms, fed by fake news. Oh, if so and so wins, we're going to fall into the earth. If so and so wins, we're going to go communist. If so and so wins, the earth's going to blow up. If so and so wins, this is what's going to happen. 1 million more people will die from the virus. If this person wins, the virus will be cured. We'll all have vaccines tomorrow. You know, it's all not fake. Well, it could be fake news. It's all beliefs that are feeding into the civil unrest. So people say, I don't want there to be any violence. Of course not. But instead of having a facilitator during a debate say, do you promise to tell your side not to get violent? And why not speak to the individuals? Hey, I'm speaking to all of you. Do you promise to take your reactivity and understand that it's coming from beliefs that have been internalized already, and that you're feeding into, those beliefs are being fed into by news that could be very fake or faulty? And even if it's not, you're being fed into. Understand, where are you getting your information from, and where are you getting your information from, out there and in there. We have the power to not create civil unrest. We don't have to look. We Leadership is important, but we don't have to look to our leaders to tell us not to do it. That sort of counters the whole point. You don't have to choose to be reactive. You could take a look at what's actually going on around you and choose for yourself if that's what's going to be necessary, because it's not going to be necessary,
Mhm.
to be violent.
I hope
So
so. The
hope so
other
too.
thing I really recommend is, and it helps me, is to disconnect, because there's so many things out there. Like, you could, if you go on the phone and you get a lot of things right away, but all this just really causes you to get anxiety, to feel certain ways, to, you know, stimulate your brain in other ways. But there are other things we can do that. We can read a book, do a puzzle, uh,
Mm,
go exercise, do things that we love, meditate. I mean, so many things that we could do, hang out with friends, have conversations. Just the thing about this fake news and all the things that are out there, and the polarization that we see, is that people are getting disconnected. There's no more, a lot of people stop talking to other people because of what they believe or who they voted for. And there's no more like connection between a lot of groups and peoples because of their beliefs. And that was not a thing before. We were able to get along, even though people voted for Republicans or Democrats or whatever. It was a thing that you were allowed to be you back in the day. And now, people judge each other so much, it's not even funny. And because of social media, we've become less social, and there's
mhm,
less contact and less communication, and people are just suffering more today. And it seems like there's a lot of mental health problems because of this. And the best way to do it is disconnect, I think.
mhm,
And
mhm. Yeah.
we've talked about that.
We have, and what's interesting is that you talk about people are suffering more now. Social media is sort of a misnomer, because we're anti-social, right?
Yeah.
Because I saw in that same documentary that I saw about, was actually watching a show about Mars, really great on Netflix. It's a mixture of a documentary and a dramatization about man's mission to Mars around 2037, and how when we colonize on Mars, it's interesting. If we get to the red planet and we colonize out there, we're going to have the same issues up there, because we're going to have, like, who owns Mars, and if there's several different settlements, you're going to have a treaty between the settlements, and
Mhm.
a new constitution, a Martian constitution. And what do we do with Mars? Do we preserve it as like a big national park, or do we cultivate it and bring up the soil and make profit off of it? And Newt Gingrich was on there as in a brief, and he was saying, his view, all the preservationists, all the environmentalists are basically wasting their time, because any movement or any change is inevitable. It's eventually going to happen. So whatever we're moving towards, we're eventually going to do. They're just sort of they're just sort of like pumps on the Titanic, so to speak. He's just preventing something that's ultimately going to happen anyway. That was his view. And then the opposite view was, when we get to the red planet, are we gonna be doing the same thing? So the polarization is already in effect. If we settled on Mars, right? Imagine that.
And it
Imagine we have
hasn't happened yet.
Hasn't happened yet, but this show's already going there. It's already saying it's already a problem before it's a problem, because we're going to want to dig up there if there's
Oh
oil. We're
yeah.
going to want, yeah, we're going to
Mhm.
want to collect the soil and see if we can get riches from the soil, and you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
then the preservationists are going to say, no, this is a beautiful red national park. We should keep it and preserve it. But what if there's life underneath there? We need to find out if there's, like, the scientists want to know if there's life. The preservationists want to keep it as a national park. The
Yeah.
profiteers want to dig for stuff,
Mhm.
and the colonists just want to expand the cities and sell condos on Mars. And one person said something interesting. They said somebody born on Mars, I'm not sure if this is medically true or not, I really don't know, but somebody born on Mars who was eventually brought back to Earth, they would sort of decompose, or their bones would crush, because they don't have the same atmospheric pressure that they were um, developed under. I'm not sure if that's actually true. If you can go from one environment to the next, you can go from Earth to Mars, but if you were born on Mars, and say you were 5 or 6 years old and then brought back to Earth, there may be a certain, I don't know if they said that in the show. I'm not sure if that was fiction. It's like, that's interesting. Wow.
Yeah, that's
It's,
that might be true. I mean, because of the density and the gravity and all those laws
yeah.
of physics. Who knows? But
Who knows?
this
Huh.
is, yeah, it's really interesting because you're right. I mean, this hasn't happened yet. They're already talking about it because it could potentially be like that. And unless we change now and we change our views and the way we do things, it just, there's so many things that I think as human beings we can still improve on. And part of that needs to be through communication, through coming together and as a species, because we are living on this planet that is very small. It seems like it's big, but it's not. We are like a tiny little particle in the universe. There's not much around us, and so we don't have that many resources as we think we do. And one day they're going to run out. So
Mhm.
part of that, I don't think fake news helps with it. I think again, we need to use critical thinking and look at the science and what people believe, and try to see if there's maybe some common ground and some compromise between our beliefs and science, because I think that's
Mhm.
where we're going to find the real answers. Because
Mhm.
when we use belief, then we're blinded by other things. And when we use just science and we don't connect it to people, then we also just have numbers and statistics, and we need to combine both of them and bring them together. And I think that would be ideal. So
Yeah, yeah. And it's just like we were just saying, when you have like 4 or 5 different agendas, you're going to have 4 or 5 different areas of concentration. So we have to be careful when we throw out, phrases like you can't argue science or how could you be so stupid? It's like, because it really depends upon, again, what paradigm you're coming from. And I'm not saying one is right over the other, but the recognition that we have these different paradigms and how do we come center so that we can work with all of the different paradigms together. Perhaps if we do, you know, um, travel to Mars, and just like we've done on Earth, hopefully we can have them compartmentalized, just like we do here. This section of Mars is preserved. This is for the scientists. This is for the, because it's like I've said oftentimes to clients, it doesn't matter if you travel. It
mhm.
doesn't matter if you go from one relationship to the next, to another job, to another city. You're taking the same suitcase with you to each international airport that you go to.
Mhm.
So if we go to another planet, we're bringing Earth's problems,
Mhm.
even if it's a fresh new planet. So yeah,
That's
fake
right.
news, fake Martian news.
All right.
Oh
Any,
no.
any last words before we end today?
Just I wonder what Facebook's going to look like on Mars. That's all. Really, what it's going to have a little red planet in the corner.
That'd be funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazon Mars. How is USPS going to deliver up there? Wow.
It's really, I love all that, by the way. I love astronomy, and I feel like the thought of us humans going to Mars is incredible. So
Yeah.
I really hope Elon Musk does it. I know he's really into it,
He's in it. He's in the show. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm sure he's going to use a lot of his money from Tesla to make that happen. And Tesla's making a lot of money now, so
Yep. He's already doing it. Yep. He's
yeah.
already talking about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's hope that's the real thing. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, thank you so much for your time.
Of
And thank
course.
you to everyone for listening. And remember, we're here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. And thank you to all the people who've been donating. We really appreciate that. And also to people who've been listening to us for now over almost a year. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And we hope to continue to make this podcast every week. So, and hopefully the election goes well. And we'll see probably next time how things went. So thank you so much, Neil. I'll talk to you
All
later.
right. Talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.
This podcast is brought to you by MindFit. Please help us to share this podcast with your friends and family to grow this community. And if you'd like to donate to this podcast, or if you'd like to share your comments, questions, or concerns, send them to mindfitpodcast@gmail.com, or you can call us directly at 714-328-4661.